So you want to go even wider with your GoPro? Well, let's take a look at the new Anamorphic Lens Mod. When the GoPro Hero 13 Black was released last year, one of the new lens mods that was announced alongside it was the Anamorphic Lens Mod. Now, this wasn't available initially on the release of the camera, but it has now finally been released. It's been a long time coming, but it is now here. GoPro quietly launched it onto the market a couple of weeks ago. Now, I've been playing with it and I've been finding out the ins and outs of this lens mod, and it's quite an interesting product. Now, anamorphic lens attachments are nothing new to the GoPro. Third parties have been making such lens attachments for the cameras for a few years now. However, GoPro's product is unique in that it takes advantage of the auto recognition system on the Hero 13 Black. This means that when you attach the lens mod, the camera automatically knows which one you've affixed to the camera, and in the case of the anamorphic lens mod, it will automatically do the de-squeezing of the image, so you don't have to do anything in post. What you effectively end up with is a 21:9 aspect ratio image straight out of the camera. Now, there are several digital lens modes available when you have this lens mod attached, everything from linear to wide angle, but the one that you're going to be most interested in is the ultra linear mode. Now, what this does is it gives you the widest possible image while retaining straight lines. In other words, you don't get the traditional GoPro fisheye look. Now, compared with the normal lens modes on the camera, having the anamorphic attachment doesn't quite give you the same height of image, but it does give you a much wider image than the standard lens on the camera. Only the ultra wide lens mod will give you a wider image than the anamorphic lens, although that comes at the expense of fisheye distortion. Now, one of the so-called attractions of an anamorphic lens is the way that it handles light flares. Now, I have to say personally, I'm not really a fan of the lens flares on this lens. They tend to move about and they become curved as they reach the top and bottom of the image. As well as that, I don't think they're particularly attractive lens flares either. So if you're looking to recreate the lens flares made famous by the likes of J.J. Abrams, you might be a little bit disappointed with the results that this lens produces. The other caveat is that when you use this lens with hypersmooth turned on, the lens flares can tend to move around the image because of the way the digital stabilization is performed. So what I found is that if you want stabilization with this anamorphic lens, I found that it's better to use the camera with hypersmooth turned off and putting it on a gimbal if you want that cinematic look. Now, if you're doing action shots and you're doing POV shots, then hypersmooth you will probably want to leave on. But if you're trying to get that cinematic look, then I would recommend using this on a gimbal. Now, one issue I have seen come up elsewhere is how to mix the anamorphic footage from this with footage you might have taken with one of the other lens mods, or indeed with the standard lens on the camera. Now, it creates a unique look. I really like the way the image looks from this, but I can see where the problems arise because it's a completely different aspect ratio to standard GoPro footage, and if you're just going to crop in, then it kind of defies the point of using this lens in the first place. But I think, you know, there are many ways in which you can integrate it. It's not unusual these days to mix aspect ratios. For example, if you're doing a travel video and you want to go all cinematic for some parts of it, and then you want to go back to a normal vlog look in 16:9, there's nothing wrong with doing that these days. There are movies by top-end filmmakers that mix aspect ratios, Dunkirk being a prime example of this. Or if you're mostly using the anamorphic lens but you have to do a couple of shots with the standard lens or one of the other lens mods, there's nothing wrong with adding black bars at the top and bottom or conforming that footage to a 21:9 format. So for me, the mix of aspect ratios that you'll get from using this lens along with the others isn't really that much of an issue, as long as you think through what you're doing and how you're going to integrate it into your video. Now, as with all curved lenses, you want to make sure that you keep this pristinely clean, because any dirt or water on the lens will be very distracting in the image, particularly if you're shooting into the sun. It will become very apparent if you have a dusty lens. Now, the image quality that you get from this camera is generally pretty good near the center, although it does tend to become a bit soft at the edges, so it isn't sharp completely from corner to corner. But generally, it is very good, and I like the look that it gives. It's definitely something different for the GoPro. It's a good idea. It's probably one of the least expensive anamorphic solutions out there. So if you like doing something unique with your GoPro, you want a bit of a different look, then it would make sense to take a good look at this. Certainly for me, I like the fact that I'm getting that ultra-wide image without any of those fisheye distortions that you would traditionally get with an action camera. So it's a very different look from the standard action camera fare. So when you're using the Anamorphic Lens Mod, you are a bit more limited with your frame rates. So for example, you can go up to 120 frames per second in 4K, but you'll only be able to use the linear mode or the wide mode. You can't use the ultra linear or the ultra wide lens mode with those high frame rates. One question I've been asked is, can you do the desqueezing of the image afterwards? Now, I have experimented with this myself, and I would say yes, you can, but it does come with some caveats. The GoPro team has told me that it's not a traditional desqueeze. There's something about this lens, I don't know what it is, that is slightly different from a traditional anamorphic lens. So if you put your pixel aspect ratio into, say, Resolve, it won't suddenly desqueeze it to that 21:9 aspect ratio. And you also have some issues with vignetting at the side of the image, which you don't get with the in-camera desqueezing. But on the whole, I would say that yes, you can do it manually by setting the camera to the standard lens mode. Obviously, you will need to turn Hypersmooth off for certain, because otherwise you get some very strange warping effects going on. So you'll need to do all your stabilization in post as well. But your mileage may vary as to the success of your result doing this. So I prefer to keep the desqueezing done by the camera itself. So overall, I do really like this anamorphic lens. I've been having fun playing around with it to see what it can do. And also I think it gives a unique look to the GoPro that you can't achieve with other action cameras. So if you already own a GoPro Hero 13 Black and you want to get into the world of anamorphic lenses, then this is a really good way to do it.